What's up, coach? In today's video, we're talking with Dr. Michelle Boland all about how to optimize your education inside and outside of the gym. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hey coach, Beverly Simpson here, owner of BSimpsonFitness and the founder of the PT Profit Podcast. In today's video, we are running the episode 3 from the podcast. It was a very special interview with my friend, Dr. Michelle Boland, and she discussed the importance of continuing education, whether you are inside of gym or outside of a gym, and how to really optimize your systems in your own training programs. It was a very important and powerful episode. So if you like this video, please hit like, let us know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe and hit that little bell for notifications on the latest and greatest videos. And without further ado, let's roll that interview.
Hello and welcome back to the PT Profit Podcast, episode number 3. I am super excited to have a very special guest, Dr. Michelle Boland here, who is going to be talking to us all about how we can make the most out of our continuing educations as professionals, coaches, trainers, clinicians. And I'm so excited to have her here. Dr. Michelle, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on. I'm super excited. Definitely going to be a full-time listener on this.
Oh, I'm so excited to hear that. This is, I said, right, episode number 3. So I'm really excited. Right before we hit record, she says to me, "You're more nervous than me." And it's totally true. I am. All right. So I want to just dive in. If you wouldn't mind, could you just share with us, tell us a little bit about who you are, your history, how you got to being so smart, and just share a little bit with us about your story.
Yeah, sure. So I was a collegiate level athlete. I was working towards a degree in nutrition, and I went through an experience that everyone should have of experiencing that profession and realizing that I absolutely had no desire to continue with it. I worked like underneath a dietitian at a hospital, and I was like, I can't do this. So I decided to go basically like the physical training route because I was just absolutely obsessed with the process of from when I tore my ACL in high school to, getting on the college field again. And so I decided to go to Springfield College, where I went for a master's in strength conditioning and then a doctorate in exercise physiology. And then I ended up at a Collegiate D1 institution to be a head strength conditioning coach. Absolutely loved it. Loved working with athletes, and especially that age group. It was phenomenal. And that's where I kind of really dived into kind of the hard skills. So, working on learning more about programming, coaching, biomechanics, exercise physiology in the practical setting instead of in a laboratory. And then I kind of had to transition into get better at like soft skills when I went into the private sector. I became the director of education at a private facility. And now I currently own my own business called Michelle Boland Training. I got to work on that name. It's not very original. And that's where I really had to kind of transition my learning from, the hard skills to the soft skills. And then also like into marketing and business in terms of like, okay, like I have what I believe in with training, how I'm going to coach people, but how can I convey that message to actually get clients? That was a difficult transition for me.
So what caused you to leave your job essentially and, start your own practice? Or is that even the right word? Start your own your own business, your own coaching program.
Yeah, I guess I was working at a facility that I didn't truly believe in. I didn't like working for someone else's like ideals or trying to make me something that I wasn't, or wasn't allowing me to be the type of trainer or professional that I wanted to be. I'm not a person who's going to kind of settle for something that I'm not truly enjoying. That I found myself, I think there's a quote by like Bill Gates, God, I could totally be butchering this. And it's like, if you go to work for 3 days in a row and dread it, then you need to make like a change. It's something along those lines. But I was doing that every day for weeks. It wasn't having to do with my clients. It was just having to do with like the environment and like the facility that I was currently at. I knew that I had the motivation and huge drive that I could do this on my own and I wouldn't be limiting. So the facility that I was at, you could only offer one flat rate for a 60-minute session. That's the only thing that you were allowed to present to a client. And for me, I felt like I was losing a lot of clients, wasn't able to like retain clients or offer them other services that they could benefit from, such as like currently I have like hybrid models. So like you could do remote training and maybe you can come see me a couple times a month in person. And I could offer, educational resources and I can offer full like remote coaching packages. So that's something that I really wanted to do. And so I kind of just went all in and did it.
I think that's awesome. And I think, that's one of the things as a fitness manager in a big box gym, we treat people. We're not trying, and we need to make our program recommendations based on their needs. And yet we're forced to be, cookie cutter. This is what we're selling. And it becomes, this person is a dollar sign and less about the actually solving the problem of the person.
100%. It goes both ways too. It negatively affects the client and their goals. Mm-hmm. And then it also negatively affects the employee/trainer because it becomes a volume-based service. So you can only make the income that you want to and the hours that you want to based on like how many sessions you can get in a day, which also isn't healthy for the employee.
Oh, absolutely. They start to trade dollar for hour and they start to think in that way as opposed to actually, taking the time to assess an actual body and goals and needs and think of them as a person. 100%.
Exactly. And it can negative affect like your interactions with people, if you're kind of going down a bad path. And it comes down to a decision of, do you want to create a profession based around your lifestyle goals or like the opposite? Are you just having a profession that's dictating how you want to, like how you're going to live your life? And I think that's a decision that every professional needs to make.
Right. I think, and there's two things that I do want to ask you based on that. But first, when you say that you worked with athletes, did you work with like was there a specific sport that you worked on?
Yeah. So when I worked in the collegiate setting, I was kind of like known as like a hockey person. I just absolutely fell in love with like the hockey culture, their desire for off-ice training. And the college that I was at was consistently in the top 5 nationally ranked teams in the country. And there was athletes on that team from all over the world on their national teams, France, Sweden, things like that. And you don't have to motivate people at that level. And you learn deep practical experience through interactions and coaching at that level. So that's what I absolutely love to do. Those were a great group of people. I also worked with the men's hockey team. And then I was also responsible for the women's rowing team and the field hockey team as my primary sports.
Oh, that's cool. So now that you're on your own, do you still primarily work with athletes at that level? Who do you primarily work with now?
So I primarily work actually that was like the middle realm, like 18 to 22 year olds. Now I kind of work with like the polar opposites of like I still stay in contact with those players, and I still write for a hockey website, and my goal is to work eventually again with a collegiate level ice hockey team, whether that's like part-time or anything like that, to stay in that capacity. Right now I work primarily, my general population clients are 50 or older or 15 and younger. So right now I actually work with 2 middle school and high school level basketball players who are prospects at the collegiate level. So kind of preparing them for the collegiate setting, because I kind of know, like, what's going to be expected of them, what they're going to need to prepare for.
That's cool. And you also work with trainers. You also, who also are similar. Many are similar to, you don't have to motivate them because typically they are hungry to learn to get better. So you do train and teach a lot of coaches to be better coaches.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, a lot of my remote training clients are physical therapists or fellow trainers. And those are some of my favorite conversations to have because, we actually talk about, what's behind a program and what my thought process is. And they want to be like pretty involved in that. Those are probably definitely some of my favorite kind of, interactions with people.
So going back to the two questions that I wanted to ask, since we were talking about, breaking away from your typical gym, setting into building your own business, I think, two things happen, which is a perfect lead into what we're going to talk about today, which is that on the one hand, when you are in that gym setting, it gets easy to kind of let go of that continued education because there's such a push essentially to look at a person as a dollar sign, how many hours can I train you, as opposed to, let me actually help and serve this person and get them out of pain and get them moving better. And so I think that there isn't enough of a stance on continued education. So people tend to not care about it. So how are that's one component that I think that we can address, but then also at the same time, you've got people moving out of the gym and then they just don't know where to go. Like, who do you turn to? Because at least when you're in that gym setting, you've got each other to talk to and to learn from, so how does one navigate the importance of continuing to sharpen the saw, especially given that things change all the time?
That's a great question. So there's multiple factors to that. So one of the things is it depends on the facility. Some people say at least you have other trainers, you can kind of bounce ideas off. Well, if it's a volume-based kind of facility, how much interaction are you actually having with other trainers when you're just working, 8 sessions in a row or 10 sessions in a row, and you have to rush back to kind of take care of like your personal responsibilities? I think one of the goals that people should have is interview the facility that you're going to work at just as much as they're interviewing you in relation to what kind of continuing education benefits are they giving you? Is that a part of the employee package? Do they provide maybe, a budget around being able to support you going out to seminars and courses? Are they giving you education as a staff? Are they prioritizing education within their facility? I think that's probably like the biggest key. Those conversations between fellow trainers are going to be so important. I think there's very high value for that. And then, the problem with when you go off on your own, where are you getting kind of trying to continue that? I think, if you're off on your own, you're a business and you should allocate resources towards growing your business. That component is education. So do you have a continuing education budget that you're giving to yourself? So setting aside money to maybe go to at least 1 or 2 courses a year. And it's not just about acquiring information. Can you actually take that information and make it useful, fill in gaps of your knowledge, understanding, and business? A big part of that too is knowing what to learn. So if you're going off on your own, your education might transition to actually how to portray the message, marketing, business tactics. And that's really focused on reaching out and establishing a network. So you're not just kind of an isolated person. You have people to reach out to, who to go to for resources. So it's kind of just transitioning into maybe being spoon-fed information through kind of when you're surrounded by other people, to actually being able to identify where you need to improve your understanding and going out and being able to do that successfully.
I love that you brought that up, that whole idea of getting a network, and especially because the people that I work with, they tend to be the really smart trainers. And I feel like we get into this coach's curse where we feel like, we always come from this, there's more to learn, there's a beginner's mindset. And so many, which is such a gift, but then so many people, they just don't go after it, or they don't really recognize how much value that they can bring to their current clients or the people that they are trying to attract into their business. So having a network is just so important.
Absolutely. And it really is working backwards from something. So you kind of just mentioned the people who you want to work with. Well, can you identify the people who you want to attract, or are you just trying to throw out this net to kind of get everyone and anyone you can, because your message won't be clear? And obviously I'm preaching to the choir right now. But you have to know the end game to be able to change your personality, build relationships, and communicate based off that end goal.
Yeah, and something else that you said I think is so important that I just want to reiterate, which is the fact that you said that, do you even know what you want to continue to study? Like, what are you basing that information or that next certification or that next seminar on? Are you basing it on your clients and trying to identify what it is they're struggling with, so you want to learn more about it? Or are you just doing that because that's what you've been told you need to do, or you're just trying to tick off a box?
100%. It's like identifying gaps you need to fill in your understanding related to, where am I failing with clients? Where am I having trouble with clients? What do you think is going to be the best intervention to be able to get a better understanding of, to address? And then it's also being able to be okay with stepping away from the hard skills. So for example, it's okay not to be studying and learning things new about program design and exercise selection and all that stuff. Yeah, that stuff's important, but you probably are at the point where you already know enough. It's developing maybe the soft skills of how to communicate better, how to use certain words and language with clients, how to, step away and take time to learn about marketing and business, and not necessarily the craft of coaching and programming and all that.
So what would you say is the number one, or not, maybe not number one, but the top struggles that you have seen in your practice or in your business with trainers who are navigating this new, building their business essentially, whether it's in the gym or out?
I think it's kind of that word navigation is the inability to navigate. I've seen a lot of trainers, and I think the biggest struggle that trainers have is just this constant consumption of information and bragging about how many seminars and things they go to, but then they actually have no idea how to apply and consolidate that information. Where does that information fit in? How can you actually implement it into the setting that you're in? I think that's where a huge gap comes in with education.
Ooh, that's so good. So what you're saying is that you see them studying because they care about it, but then they can't implement it.
Yeah, exactly. They'll go to, weekend courses consistently, whether it's they're paying for or their employee, but then they come back and they're not able to explain their biggest takeaways or extract concepts that they can utilize within their own training. Mostly it starts from the inability to understand what you stand for, what you value, because if you don't understand that, you don't have a place to put new information.
That's so good and so true. So what would you recommend? What do you typically recommend to those trainers or coaches that are struggling with that?
Spend more time consolidating information, or if you acquire new information, take time to sit down and think about where that information sits with what you're already doing. I think this is where the academic system really fails us, because we all, have degrees or go through at least a bachelor's degree, but we're not actually told like why it's important that we're doing things, why it's important that we write essays, what's the underlying reason, what are we trying to work for, and then what to do with that information. So they don't really give us learning skills. They kind of try to indirectly provide that, but it's missed by a lot of people. And so I think it's really sitting down, even just learning how to learn. There's great resources out there, such as like the book Make It Stick. It provides kind of tips on how to navigate this world of like vast information, what to do with it. So I think it's actually not just taking in new information, it's sitting down and thinking about how you're actually going to use it, what it means, and then taking the time to say, okay, what's important to me? What do I value in training? Who am I as a coach? And kind of developing your own identity instead of using other people's information to fulfill your own identity. And that's one of the biggest gaps or failures, I think, from the academic system, is that they don't actually teach us learning skills. And so I think we have to step back, if we're people who value education, to be actual take time into figuring out how to actually be better learners. So there's great resources there's one book called Make It Stick that gives you kind of tips, helpful information, how to remember things better and how to take information and apply it to your settings. I think those are probably the most important skills when it comes to continuing education, because a lot of what I see with trainers, I've previously stated this, but it's going out and going to weekend seminars or seeing someone else, on social media doing something and kind of just implementing it without an understanding. And it kind of weans out after a while. Like you try something new, you don't really get it, so you don't find it important. It's also being able to create your own identity. So are you going to these seminars and courses that are probably teaching some sort of system? And are you just embedding yourself in that system and trying to become it? Or do you have an understanding of who you are, what you value, what's important to you in terms of training your clients and developing your own identity? And can you just extract things that are going to fill your gaps, improve your level of understanding, improve your client's results from that information? And that's a huge skill that I think a lot of people lack, but I don't think it's their fault. I think it's just overall how we're educated as a whole.
I think that's such an important point. I mean, one of the things too that you said is that you were talking about weekend seminars, but even to me, and in my opinion, that's a step up. I mean, I got my certification from a book. Like I just read a book and then I went and took a multiple choice test. And that's how I all of a sudden then got deemed an assumed authority on human movement. I think at least the weekend seminar is a step up, but the truth and what I have found where I feel like the academic system has failed us is that you don't learn how to swim by reading a book on swimming. You have to get in the water and you have to try things out. And like you said, what happens is that these trainers, whether they're in or out of a gym, is they go and take this seminar, they learn it, they try a few things, but then they don't know what to do based on the information or based on the outcome of their own performance or their client's performance. And then they're kind of just left waddling to their own devices thinking, okay, well, did it work or did it not work? And then there's just it's just kind of like an empty space to figure that out.
Yeah, exactly. I think it really just comes down to understanding or thinking in an abstract way. So like overarching concepts. And really that's a lot of it has to do with like model development. And what you're saying is basically like there's multiple tiers when it comes to the learning process. At the bottom, it's understanding, remembering. And then you're getting into maybe the middle tier of applying. But the higher levels are creating, evaluating, and analyzing. And that's where like the fun happens. That's where like improvement, that's where the great people lie, because they're creators. They can figure out if what they're doing is actually working or failing, and then kind of coming back full circle by remembering, understanding, and learning new information, and then embedding it into kind of modifying what they're doing. And so it kind of comes full circle. And that's really thinking abstractly in terms of like model principles and elements. It's kind of like the things I talk about. And then moving all that information and adding context to it by creating systems. So systems is basically just, it's not like a rigid term. It's basically like the overall encompassing of like what you're doing with the people that you're working with. What are the strategies and methods that you are doing on a daily basis? And models and like abstract thinking is just like where all this is coming from.
Oh, I love that. And honestly, I'm smiling because I say I say something very similar when it comes to marketing. Because marketing is all about guessing, testing, and then assessing.
Oh.
Right? That's exactly what I talk about. You have to assess, and inside the which is where I think many people miss the mark, is that, they just throw a whole bunch of like spaghetti on the wall and then to see what sticks. But they fail or they miss. It's not their fault, but they miss the fact that they need to assess what happened, and the numbers are going to be able to tell you where the pitfalls are, where your lessons are, where your successes are, and what to do next. And I think that people miss that. They can't get to that if they can't understand what it is they're assessing.
Yeah, and maybe that's an important point that people, like, if you don't have the ability to do that, because one of the biggest things I've learned from you is that of like, I kind of just like threw things out there and was just like, oh, well, I'm doing something. But it's like going back and analyzing like who's opening your things, who's clicking, like is what you're writing addressing the message or like the transformation that you're trying to create. And that basically comes from who is doing that, and then trying to learn from that person or seeking them out. And that's a huge step.
Yes. And then also, having that community, because people come for content, but they stay for community and the support system and the network that is created. Like-mindeds attract like minds.
Absolutely.
Part of the reason what caused you to create, you have that MBT strategy course and then also the group classroom, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've kind of gone through the academic system, and I feel like I've been able to identify where that fails in some aspects, and then going to like, taking my own continuing education seriously, being around trainers who kind of talk about their biggest struggles through that process. I kind of took all those experiences and created a course of my own that helps trainers really consolidate information, identify who they want to be in this profession, and then provide them with learning skills and take them through how to create concepts to work from, and then create systems, methods, and strategies that fit into that. So like, you'll never get lost in information if you have that foundation. So it will allow you to have an underlying foundation, and now just moving forward, creating a trajectory in your education and career, you'll be able to just fill gaps in. You'll be able to kind of fit in new information, and you'll just build new scaffolding without like becoming lost in this like vast, crazy amount of information that you're being fed.
I think that's so good and so true, and such, I feel like a lot of people miss that.
Yeah, it's not another course that's giving you more training information and more modalities to be able to use with your clients. It's stepping back from that and saying, okay, when I go out and learn more about that, how can I be better at extracting things that are more useful for me and my clients? So it's basically teaching you how to learn better in this industry.
And I think that's so good and so important. First of all, I want to be last of all is the way to say it, but I want to be very mindful of your time and thank you sincerely for joining me here. But if somebody wanted to learn more about you, where are you hanging out? Where can I send people?
Perfect. Yeah, I'm very active on Instagram. That's where I put a lot of my content up. It's at dr.michelleBoland. And in my profile, you can find like a wait list for my upcoming group classroom that I do for my strategy course. So it's a much more personalized experience with a group of your peers. And you can also find some other things that I'm kind of doing on that platform.
Okay, great. And I'll be sure to link all of those. So I'll link the waitlist in the show notes. I'll also link the Instagram profile in the show notes as well.
Perfect. Good.
All right. So yeah, I love the IG. So I thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. So if you like this podcast, be sure to subscribe, come say hi, tag us on Instagram, let us know that you listened to it and what your biggest takeaway was, because we definitely want to celebrate you for spending the time here with us today. So weird, I want to just wave and say bye.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. Chances are if you like this video, your friends will too. So share it with your social media channels and we'll see you on the next video.